Hey, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Minnesota Rockstars podcast. And this week we have with us Nick Retka, the fish guide, and we're talking fishing this week. We're going to change things up a little bit. Here in Minnesota, it's just about the Minnesota Fishing Opener, the land of 10,000 lakes. And if you've never fished Minnesota before, I highly encourage you to do so, because even a guy like myself can catch some fish in this state. Not so much the same as far as deer hunting goes, but a lot of fun fishing in the state of Minnesota here. And we talk about everything from beginner level to more experienced and advanced level fishing. So kind of covers all aspects and all types of fishermen and fisher ladies out there. So if you're into fishing a little bit or just kind of curious on what fishing is all about, this might be a good one for you to listen into. So I'm going to be quiet and we're going to get going to the podcast. I hope you guys enjoy. Hey, I did want to mention before we start the podcast here that Nick is actually offering a 10% discount to anyone who books a trip with him starting now until May 11th, 2025 here. That's the opener weekend here in Minnesota. So if you're looking to book a fishing trip with a guide in the Brainerd Lakes area, get a hold of Nick, the fish guide here. And if you book that trip before May 11th, 2025 here, he's going to give you a 10% discount. So I highly recommend getting on his website, the fish guide, or also go and check out his social media pages as well. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Minnesota Rockstars podcast. Today I am with the fish guide, Nick Retka. Nick, thanks for coming over.
Absolutely. It was a long hike.
Nick's been on here a time or two before, and you know, we've talked hunting quite a bit, but I wanted to bring you over because the fishing season here in Minnesota is just about ready to kick off, and I'm pretty excited because this year I'm going to be doing a lot more fishing because I am finished playing baseball, and I'm going to hit the water a lot more. So I'm pretty excited, and I want to do a fishing podcast with you because I want to gain more knowledge because I am so green with this sport. It's crazy. But first, before we start getting into some of those things, as a guide, I want to know for you, what is the best part about being a guide?
I'd say the best part is just bringing people out that don't get to experience fantastic fishing all the time. Like, they remember a day or two that they've had in their life where it was really, really good, but a lot of times you get to bring them out and you hear that was the best day of fishing that they've ever had. And that, to me, is definitely the most rewarding feeling at the end of the day when they're just bragging already to people on their phone about all the fish that they've caught or are catching, and they want all the pictures to go home with and show everybody. So it's very rewarding in that sense.
I think for me would be kind of like the other day when I was shooting my 9mm. I wanted to be around somebody that knew what they were doing. And myself right now, like I've gone out fishing, obviously, but I don't know how to fish. I know how to fish, but I don't know how to fish. Reason being, like I've gone out, I've got caught crappies, sunfish, snagged northern here and there, but targeting specific species, that type of thing, like that's how I want to, expand my growth in fishing. And I think for myself, that would be a great idea to, get along and go with a guide and see and learn from somebody that's done it time and time again to see what works, to see what I'm doing wrong. Because I've talked to you numerous times. I go up to my in-laws lake and, we're trying to catch walleyes or we're trying to catch bass or whatever. And what I usually ended up catching, northerns, and, you snag some crappies. It's like, well, let's just go for crappies again because I'm catching crappies. But just that learning factor and picking up on little tips and tricks, which we'll talk about here a little later. But like you said, talking about your customers that you've had come out there with you, give me your best story of you helping somebody catch fish out there. Let's hear it.
Well, there's a lot of good ones, but I remember this one pretty distinctly that we went out doing some fishing the day before, and it was muskie fishing, and we had some close calls, but nothing made it into the boat. And the next day, we were going to target smallmouth, and I said, just give me one spot. I just want one spot to take you. It'll take us 15 minutes at most And we pull up there. The guy gets the rod ready, starts casting, and it was like his 6th cast of the day. And hooks the fish, and the fish comes out of the water and is making runs all over the boat. And we put it in the net, and both the kids, I mean, they weren't kids, but they were in their mid-20s, and they're just freaking out because it was their first muskie that they've seen because they're from out of state too. And yeah, it was very cool. But I just remember that one distinctly because it was one of the first muskies I guided too, and it was a topwater strike, and just everything was perfect. And they believed in me to give me that one spot that morning to go and chase muskies just for a little bit longer, since the day before was a little on the tougher side. But yeah, it came together in the end.
I think that's the one thing for me. You brought me out one time, and we went on the river. And you said we're going to go try to catch a muskie, and I've never caught a muskie in my life before. It's like, okay, let's see how much Nick knows here. And we go out there, and I'm casting. I'm launching bombs. Like I'm used to the little open bail, throw it out there. The wind catches, your line, and it just goes about, I don't know, 20 yards, and it drops in the water. I mean, I'm chucking this thing 60 yards, and we're throwing these big rigs out there, and I think it was I dang near had it reeled all the way up to the boat, and all of a sudden we had one come up and surface right by the boat.
Yeah.
But that was pretty sweet. It's like, holy Lord, we know what we're doing here. That's pretty sweet. But it's, I don't know. I'm just really intrigued with fishing right now, and I'm on a big kick with it. Give our listeners the story of this elderly gentleman that you have a video of. Kind of explain what happened there, because I think that is the funniest. It's the coolest and funniest story and video that I've seen when it comes to fishing.
Well, that's one I still have to post yet. I'm in the mid-editing process on it, but yeah, he's come with me a few times, and we're fishing walleyes, and I saw a couple big ones on the live scope, and we threw the line out, and bobber went down. He hooks it, and instantly just starts pulling pretty hard for a 91-year-old gentleman, and he's just like cussing up a storm, but this is just his personality too. Like it's just what he does. He gets excited, he starts cussing and just screaming and hooting and hollering, and yeah, we fight it for a while, and he is saying, "Oh, grab the rod, my wrists and stuff," even too, because his wrist can't handle some big fish fights. But yeah, we get it in the boat, and he's just like,
"What is it?
What is it?" Yeah. And then I said, "Oh, it's a walleye," and just his mood just changes, and he just goes, "Oh, that's the biggest fish I've ever caught."
It was hilarious. You showed me that video, and I couldn't stop laughing. It was absolutely hilarious, and just to see that pure excitement, that joy that you helped bring that gentleman has got to be what it's all about.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
What's the most difficult part about guiding?
Tough days of fishing.
Believe it.
When it gets to be the August heat and everything's deep and the weeds are tall, and it's hard to find fish, hard to get baits in front of fish because they're just deep down in the weeds, and it can be brutal sometimes in August, but then sometimes you can get the right weather and have a fantastic day of fishing too. So it's kind of a give and take, but it's always fun to get out there, and for the most part, we still manage to catch fish. We just have to work a little harder in August than some other times of year. Like June's just fantastic. The fall can be fantastic too. But as it gets later in the summer, it's not just you or whoever else that's fishing in late summer. It's everybody. That fishing definitely gets tougher during that time of year.
We got the jet skiers and wakeboarders and all that stuff too to contend with. As far as the opener coming up, my excitement level is high. I probably won't even go out, but my excitement, every year I get jacked up for fishing, and I very seldom go out, but I absolutely love it. Most of my summer's been tied up with baseball, but what's your level on a scale 1 to 10? Like 10 when you were probably the youngest and you couldn't wait for the opener. What's your level of excitement on a scale 1 to 10?
Well, I used to get a lot more excited about opener. Now I kind of take opener off.
Yeah.
I don't go out on opening day.
Sure.
I let everybody go out there and have their fun, and I start the next day. Seems to work out a little bit better. Traffic kind of gets pretty insane at boat launches and stuff on that Saturday. So I just take one more day off and then start on Sunday usually. And it works out pretty good.
Yeah, no, I believe. I think I went out once on the opener. I went up to, it was Leech Lake. I went up there, and the gentleman I went with, his dad, we had to bring him back to shore because he was getting a little ill. I mean, we were fighting some rollers, and we fished most of the day. And I ended up landing a 27.5-inch walleye just, at sunset, when they started hitting. But that made the entire trip.
Yep,
that made the entire trip. And then we get back to shore, and I hop out of the boat, and it felt like I was walking on a waterbed for the next, 8 hours or so. But what should people be doing right now? Let's talk basic here, okay, in prep for the opener. Like what are some basic things that people should be doing to gear up for the season?
Probably doing some oil changes on the boat is probably one of the most important things. And then definitely checking all electronics to make sure those are still working because, it depends where you store your boat, but mice are always an issue too, right? Mice can chew through an electrical cord, but just having all that squared away before you get on the water tends to make for a better opener. I got my 100-hour service done here just recently, so I'm all set to go in that sense. And now I'm just doing some electrical stuff, making sure all the graphs are working properly, all the firmware and stuff is updated on the graphs, and everything's doing what it's supposed to do. Now with technology on the boats, everything talks to each other, so making sure that everything is talking to each other before getting on the water will make for a more enjoyable opener as well.
How about like line on your rod and stuff? How often should a person replace that? Because every year I go up to my in-laws lake, it's like, well, wonder how long this line's going to make it. How often should a person replace their line?
It kind of depends how you treat your rods and reels. Like if you bring them into the garage after you're done using them, not like leave them in the boat every single day out baking in the sun. I mean, the sun is what's going to deteriorate the line the most. So keeping them relatively in the shade or in a house, whether or in the boat covered up, something like that, that'll help longevity of line. But I can get away sometimes even with going a couple years without changing line on the rods and reels without losing the braking strength, because for the most part, all the line that we use today is, a lot of people like braided line. I use a lot of braided line, and it has a decent enough braking strength where you can get by if it loses a couple pounds even. But once it starts to you could see it kind of start fraying and deteriorating, you're definitely going to want to replace it, because then you definitely lose braking strength there, and it only takes one fish, losing that one fish, that big one, where you'll really wish that you replaced your line.
What is the difference between braided, mono, and then fluorocarbon?
Fluorocarbon's meant to be a abrasion-resistant and invisible type of line.
Okay.
A lot of guys use it for leader material more so than anything. I've ran it on rods, just filling up the whole spool with it. It tends to be a little on the stiff side sometimes. So if you don't get the right fluorocarbon and you spool your whole reel with it, when you go to cast, it's just going to shoot off the spool.
Sure.
And a lot of people have that issue with fluorocarbon. That's where braid is really nice, because braid, you almost never have that issue. And you can just run a fluorocarbon leader on the end, whether it's you do a swivel and then a leader, or there's tons of knots that you can tie that'll connect the two lines directly. And it's not too difficult to figure out one of those knots. Like, I've been tying a uni to uni forever. The FG knot is a really good knot, but it's kind of more confusing and harder for people to tie. But I've been using that knot a lot recently, and it's been working really well. But I tend to run a lot of braid with a fluorocarbon leader. I don't really run too much mono. I have a couple rods for specific techniques that I'll do it for. Jigging wraps, if you're doing a lot of jigging wraps, mono can actually be really good on a jigging wrap. I like it better than braid personally, but it's like one tactic. So it's really tough to justify having even more than one rod rigged up with mono if I only use mono for one tactic. Otherwise, braid is almost the way to go for everything.
Explain to people what a leader is.
So a lot of people, when you say leader, actually think of like steel leaders, right? The 12-inch, you got the swivel on top, the snap on the bottom, and it's just a piece of wire in the middle. When I say leaders, always am referring to just a piece of fluorocarbon that goes on the end of the line. So I never do a ball bearing swivel or a swivel of any sorts, really, to connect my fluorocarbon to my braided line. It's always a uni to uni knot or an FG knot that attaches those two pieces of line.
Sure.
And then I'll start with 5 to 6 feet. And when it works down to about 2 to 3 feet, I'll replace it. I'll just tie a new one on there. But that seems to be kind of just the best way to go about it, because you got that invisibility for the last however many feet of line, but you got the castability and the strength of the braided line, and you don't have to worry about the coiling thing I was telling you about too. It's a lot better to have that braid on the spool than straight fluorocarbon, in my opinion.
Most people use mono, correct? I mean,
Yes.
the general public, whatever.
Yes.
How do you determine what pound test you should buy?
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people will go with whatever everybody else has been using for years and stuff too, which is fine. But the smaller the line, it does tend to have a little bit better benefits just for pliability in the reel, as well as a little bit more invisible to the fish. Like going from 12 to 6 is a huge difference in line diameter. And when you put it on the spool, it's a massive difference in the memory. The thicker the line, the higher the memory it's going to have, and the harder it's going to be to stay on the spool for you, generally. And using something like 12-pound line all the way, like your whole spool filled with 12-pound line for like walleyes is just overkill, and it'll actually be more headaches than anything. It won't work well for your lighter gear, because when we're doing walleyes, we're doing lighter gear. We're using a 3/8 ounce, slip sinker if you're Lindy rigging, and then you got a piece of line to just a plain hook. Well, that's not a lot of weight. That's 3/8 of an ounce, and that's basically it. Like a 12-pound would be more meant for casting like a lure for bass, like a crankbait or something like that. Something that's a little heavier, has a little bit more weight, and that memory won't be a factor for it as much. And it'll also just cast a lot smoother because you have a lot more weight behind it.
So when we go from 6 to 12 or whatever, like when I said, I don't know anything about test for the line. If I go the 6-pound test, does that mean I can only catch a 6-pound fish? I mean, like what does that mean? The 6-pound, 12-pound, what does that exactly mean?
So that's your breaking strength. That's generally like if you were to pull apart,
the force.
Yeah, pull apart and you get to 6 pounds, the line should break because that's what it's rated for. You can always catch a bigger fish on smaller pound test.
Okay.
Because that's your drag in your rod doing the work.
Okay.
And you're just playing it easy, wearing the fish out, so then it just kind of glides up into you eventually. 6-pound and 8-pound tests are really common for walleye fishing around here, but you could easily catch a 10-pound walleye around here, and guys do it all the time. So it's not necessarily that, I want to catch a 10-pound walleye, so I'm going to use 10-pound test. You kind of just go for what's going to work the best for the type of tactic that you're using. Okay. And then let the drag and the rod do the rest of the work for fighting the fish.
Makes sense. Yep. Yeah, because I was like, okay, 6-pound test. What does that mean? A 6-pound fish or what? I had no clue. Yep. I had zero clue what that meant. But the amount of force going there, and then what type of I'm gonna have to jot that one down. I did already because like I said, I'm learning this, and I have a short-term memory, so I'll forget rather quickly. How about rods, Nick? What should a person, let's say a beginner out there, what should they be looking at for if they want to buy a new rod? What type of rod should they go with? I mean, not necessarily brand names, but what style of rod?
Well, I'm going to touch on one thing with line too first. Okay. I should have mentioned this, but like a braided line. Mm-hmm. So braided line actually has a smaller diameter than what the pound test is. So you can do like a 15-pound test braided line, but it'll be the diameter of like a 4-pound monofilament line. So it has a higher breaking strength for a smaller diameter of line. And that's why it's also really nice too, because when you spool that up, it's like you're casting 4-pound mono on that reel, but you have a 15-pound breaking strength. So a lot of my rods are spooled up with 10 to 15-pound braided line, and then I will use my like 8-pound fluorocarbon leader.
Is there a big price difference in the two, or all of them, I guess I should say?
Mono's the cheapest.
Yeah. Okay.
And then fluorocarbon and braid run relatively the same.
Okay.
They're a decent amount more expensive, though, than monofilament.
So what type of rod are we looking at?
You can catch almost anything around here. I mean, you got to factor out like panfish, because those obviously, like a lot of guys like using an ultralight or a light action rod for those, and they're a lot smaller than most of the other fish around here. But your bass, your walleyes, your pike, that's kind of the majority of what everybody fishes, I would say, that isn't fishing for panfish. And you can get by with a 7-foot medium light or a 7-foot medium for almost all three of those species. It's really tough to say one versus the other, though, because every brand is so different, with like a medium light running a little stiffer for one brand versus a medium running a little softer for another brand. And you have to do a little bit of playing with the rod to know for sure. But generally speaking, if you're casting like lures, a medium. 7-foot medium will catch almost anything. You can cast whatever kind of lure you want, as long as it's not like a big size musky lure, but you can cast crankbaits, spinner baits, chatterbaits, swim baits, anything like that with a 7-foot medium. That'll catch everything. When you're running like live bait for walleyes, or live bait for anything really, I mean, bass, pike, a 7-foot medium light, even for that, is awesome. And you'll have fun fights for all the fish. But I like a little softer rod when I'm running live bait, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I need to definitely invest in some, because like I said, the rods we've been using for years have sat in the woodshed, and they only come out during the summertime when fishing is not the greatest, when we go up there in July and whatnot.
Yep.
But it's something that we've talked about. Getting myself some new rods and get things rigged up the way I should be, because I want to start. I'm really like, I like a challenge. I mean, ever since I've been young, I like a challenge. I'm not the type of guy to put me on the best team because I want to win. Put me on the worst team because I want to work my ass off to kick your ass. You know what I mean? Like that's my mentality. So like right now, like my mindset is going towards like, I want to start becoming that guy that, becomes a little more species specific when I go out there fishing, rather than just giving in and being like, okay, I'm not catching bass, but the crappies are biting, I'm just going to go for crappies. And there'll be times I'll do that, but I think what I want to do is like in the mornings and stuff, when everybody else is sleeping, I want to get up, go out on the water, nobody else out there type of thing, and just try to do my thing, and sometimes, you've done this a lot, but sometimes that's just going by yourself and not going with somebody else that kind of pressures you into being like, should we just do this? Okay, sounds good, because they were thinking it too, and then you kind of just give in. But, I really want to make sure. So about 7-foot medium light rod is kind of...
A 7-foot medium light is generally, like, if you want to run live bait, which is... When I say live bait, I guess I'm more so speaking to leeches and night crawlers.
Sure.
You could use some of the bigger minnows and stuff. If you were doing like sucker minnows, that would be your 7-foot medium probably. Okay. If you're going to run for pike. That would be a fantastic live bait rod, running like a big Lindy rig with a sucker minnow on a 7-foot medium. Oof. Yeah. That's when it's going to be fun.
So speaking of kind of getting your setup all ready for specific species, I'm going to give you a little scenario here. All right. I want to catch a walleye. What are you using for bait? And what's your setup look like? Is it different from early season to mid season to late season? So what does your setup look like, and where are you fishing? And I'll kind of help guide you as we go here.
Well, if it's walleye fishing and I'm allowed to use bait, it's going to be a slip bobber, and that's it all season.
Just simple.
All season.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the easiest thing. It's the most effective thing. You can change the bait on it from a leech to a night crawler, and it just always works. I ran a slip bobber and a night crawler until like mid-October last year, and it was still working. And I started the season with it, and it was working.
Jeez.
So it's a super simple thing that you never have to untie, which I really like. Running the same program all year long and just nonstop catching fish, and you catch everything.
Is the depth pretty similar around that 15 foot? I mean, that's kind of what I hear quite a bit.
Yeah, so early season, you could find them a little shallower. On certain lakes, though, you could find them a little shallower depending on your water clarity. Then you get to like late summer, and you can go kind of almost as deep as you want. Some of those fish will be roaming in the deepest part of the lakes, kind of depending on the lake too. But I've caught walleyes over 60, 70 feet of water. They're only 20, 25 feet down, but they'll still bite. If you can find them and put a bait in front of them, you can definitely get them to bite. But a lot of times, the weeds are the easiest place to find the fish. So kind of cruising on the weeds, looking for. It's really tough to find, not seeing it, not proving it to yourself, but looking for a difference in the weeds. On any type of graph, you can find it. I mean, I used to do it before forward-facing sonar and everything, too. I used to do on 2D sonar, just cruising the weed edge and finding where all the weeds look the same, but then all of a sudden they look different, and they're like a little bit more sparse. And you also see the bottom go from kind of like I call it noise. You'll see the bottom of the lake, and there'll be noise kind of running down an inch or two, but then all of a sudden it shortens up, and it gets just really skinny. That's it changing from soft bottom to hard bottom. Those spots right there always hold fish. They always hold bass. They always hold pike. They always hold walleyes. And finding spots like that can be really good. Generally, that's because the weed line's broken up. So you get a change in weeds, but you also get a breakup of just this wall of weeds. And what that does is it creates ambush points for those fish. So it's a pocket in the weeds. Bait kind of comes through, but there was also pockets for those fish to hide and sit there and just ambush. And it's always been a thing for me fishing that as soon as I figured it out. I mean, I figured it out probably senior year in high school maybe. But, and then you just look for those spots all the time. You look for that hard to soft bottom transition and in the weeds. So it has to be in the weeds. You're not looking for it going from 19 to 22 feet and finding the hard to soft bottom down there, which it can be good still, but it tends to be actually in the weeds in that, a lot of times it's 13, 14 feet because it just creates this wall, because normally that's where the weeds grow up super tall.
Sure, it makes sense.
And then, you get that hard bottom, and all of a sudden it's just this blank circle in there, and it holds fish.
How about for bass?
Same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah, same thing.
Because my brother-in-law and I go and hit the lake, and he's this big bass master guy, right? Like, he wants to catch bass. Like, let's go catch some bass. I'm like, all right, and he's throwing these top baits out there, and he's ripping them across the lily pads and stuff. And I mean, we've caught some okay bass, but I just wanted to make sure that I got that taken care of for him.
No, just take those same spots and use a bait on the bottom.
Okay.
So use like a lot of guys call it Texas rigged plastics. Okay. You ever heard of that?
No.
No?
I haven't.
It's just like a cone slip sinker and extra wide gap hook, and you're hooking the plastic once through the top of it and kind of spinning the hook around and rehooking it so the bait becomes weedless.
Yep, I understand that, yep.
Yeah, a lot, and honestly, all I run is like crawfish plastics for the most part. I used to run all the different kinds and shapes and sizes, but now it's like a 4-inch chigger craw, call it good. Like, if they're not biting that, I'm just going to find where they are biting that. Otherwise, a skirted jig with a chigger craw trailer. And that's honestly almost all that I use for largemouth bass, and even kind of smallmouth bass too. A little bit of drop shot stuff with them, but
that's the one thing I'm looking forward to really attacking is a smallmouth bass. I've caught one smallmouth bass in my life, and it was with my wife's grandfather on the Mississippi. And I hooked into it, and I thought I was reeling in a northerner muskie. I kid you not. And that thing just fought, and I pulled it up. I'm like, what the heck? Like, this thing fought so hard. And people who have never caught a smallmouth before, I mean, the name is kind of deceiving, like smallmouth. Like, I mean, you hear the word small. I mean, it might have the name smallmouth, but they fight big. I mean, they fight big. They fight harder than a largemouth.
They're one of the most popular game fish for a reason. Everybody loves them.
One thing that gets discussed every now and then, but as myself as a fresh fisherman, doesn't know a whole lot about it. There is strategy when catching a fish and releasing it to make sure that you're giving that fish the best opportunity to survive. Can you kind of explain what a person should be thinking about and doing when catching and releasing a fish to give that fish an opportunity to survive?
I mean, first things first, like, get yourself a rubber net. Don't use those string ones that cut up the fish's fins and stuff like that. You should have a rubber net for everything. It should be for your walleyes, for your muskies, like obviously different sizes for those two. But everybody should be using a rubber net because it's definitely safer for the fish in that regard. Helps protect the slime coat as well on the fish. Doesn't kind of scrape away it with that string. But do that, and then once that fish is in the net, take notice of where the hook is. If that hook is deep, try to double time it. Get that fish back in the water as fast as possible. Get the hook out as fast as possible. There's one thing I do for deep hooked fish. It kind of takes a little bit of practice, but always just have your pliers ready too. Don't have them buried in the boat so the fish has to wait. Have them ready to go. You could buy all kinds of different tools and devices to keep them ready, whether it clips to your belt or buy one of those magnet systems like people use in their kitchens for knives and just slap those right on there, and you can pop them off quick, have your scissors and your pliers right there ready to go, and then as soon as you're done, put them right back on that magnet. But if that hook is deep and in its throat, a lot of times what I do is I'll put the line in my mouth, about 6 inches above the hook. I'll get that line in my mouth and kind of pull it straight as I'm having that fish's mouth open, and I'll take the pliers and enter through the gill, and all you have to do then is just grab the hook and just spin it 180 degrees. Hook is unpinned at that point, and then lift with your mouth and pull away the fish so the hook just comes straight out, and it doesn't end up damaging their throat and stuff too. A lot of guys are sitting there kind of trying to go from the top side, and you end up practically ripping out the throat that way. If you just go, you got to be gentle though, because you can damage the gills. But if you can slide that in there really nice and just go nice and smooth and slow, pop that hook out, pull it out. I think I've saved more fish's lives that way than anything else.
That's a hell of a tip.
Yeah.
I've never even thought about doing that before. Usually it's, oh man, you just feel bad for the fish. You're trying to get that hook out. It's like, what do you do? What about people who, if you cut the line because you can't get the hook out, that fish is basically going to die, isn't it?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Sometimes like they say that like the fish is like saliva or whatever sometimes, I guess, can decompose the hook over time. And I've caught fish with rusted hooks in their mouth too. Really? And I think eventually they will rust out.
Sure.
And I've also caught fish that had a hook in its mouth and it tried to eat another hook. Like, they're still hungry. They're still going to try to do it. How long they can do it for, I guess I don't know. But there's also been fish caught that have a full fish in its mouth, and they still try to eat yours too. Yeah. Like, as they're digesting another fish that completely takes up their whole entire mouth. Oh. So they'll try. They'll definitely try. I don't know what mortality looks like on that, I guess. But I would say, I try to avoid clipping hooks as much as possible. The one thing I do clip hooks the most for is muskies.
Sure.
Because they're huge hooks, and those fish can, if they get too damaged, they can die a lot easier than a lot of fish because of the stress and stuff on those things and how old they are.
I know there's a lot of controversy on muskie fishing with live scopes now and stuff. Let's dive into that a little bit. So I told you I was going to ask you some questions on live scope, and it has been a game changer, has it not?
Yeah, I think I've learned more about fish behavior in the last couple of years with live scope than I have in my whole entire life of researching and listening to everybody else and stuff. Because one thing live scope taught me was that a lot of theories are incorrect.
Sure.
So
here we go. Some people say, Nick, that a live scope is like, when it comes to deer hunting, flying a drone over the top of a woods to figure out where a deer is at, if you can hunt it, and if you can't hunt it. Would you say that's accurate or not?
Pretty close, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously not quite as effective. I mean, it takes a little bit more time and a little bit more effort when it comes to fish. And you obviously have weeds to contend with, and you can't see the fish all the time in the weeds. They can hide pretty well from you. You can see some in the weeds, but a lot of fish can hide very well. Mm-hmm. But I would say it's a pretty close analogy, or it's pretty close to the same, I would say.
What's your take on it? I mean, some people are saying it's ethical, some people unethical. I heard rumor that the state might outlaw it here. I mean, there's people talking in that regard. What's your overall thoughts on it?
I think when it comes to technology, whether it's hunting or fishing, I think we need to be the ethical ones. It's not the technology that makes things ethical or unethical. It's us and what we choose to do with the technology that is making things ethical or unethical. So if I'm using LiveScope and I'm going to the same 100-acre lake over and over again and catching my limit of crappies 18 days in a row, that's pretty unethical. But if I'm going out there, I'm having fun, I'm catching fish, I'm releasing fish, and I'm also keeping only what I want, not keeping my limit every time just because I don't have any self-control, then I don't think there's anything wrong with the technology. The problem is a lot of people don't necessarily have that self-control. There's a lot of people that have a really tough time releasing fish, and I get it, but we also have to think about the resource. And we have to enjoy the fact that we might have a little bit better technology, and maybe we've become a little bit better fishermen because of it, but in the same note, be more responsible and ethical and let a few more fish go and not keep our limit every time out. I've tried to do my best to get people to understand that in the boat when I guide. Mm-hmm. Almost everybody is way on board with it. Yep. They completely understand. We release walleyes, any walleye over 22 inches, we throw back, and we catch a lot of them too. Mm-hmm. But we try to keep eaters, like 17, 18-inch fish, fantastic eating size fish. And some people, even if we're getting a lot in the day, and I just ask them, hey, like, do you want fish to take back home to Alabama with you, or are you just looking to have a fish fry while you're up here on vacation? And a lot of people have said, well, I'm just looking to have a fish fry on vacation. I said, well, this is probably enough based on what you told me. And they're like, oh yeah, perfect. That sounds great. Like, thank you for telling us. Like, most people don't want to disrespect the resource in that way and are very responsible and very on board with it. But you do hear those stories, right? You do hear the stories of people giving LiveScope a bad name because it is a good piece of technology. But I think the DNR is also a little slow on their changes with regulating how many fish people can take home too. Like, there's been a lot of experimental limits on crappies and sunfish, where certain lakes you can only keep 5 of each on those lakes that are really prone to overfishing, especially in wintertime. Wintertime is the major time where fish get over-harvested, especially panfish on lakes, because everybody likes going to the smaller lakes where the fish can't hide from them, and it's easy fishing. But the walleye limit is getting talked about bringing down to 4, which ever since I was in high school, I've always wondered why we can keep more walleyes than we can keep pike, because I catch way more pike than I catch walleyes, and I think everybody does.
100%.
But
100%. You brought up an interesting point with when I was talking to you. I was listening to another radio program. They were talking about muskies, and with LiveScope, where people are able to catch more muskie now because they can use their LiveScope rather than knowing how to fish muskie. They see the muskie, they go after it. But knowing certain times a year and catching them and how to properly catch and release them and whatnot, you brought up an interesting point on, and I don't know if, if you remember this or not, but you were talking about maybe doing like some type of online course before you go and catch muskie. This was just a random thought you had that thought might help the survival rate of muskies. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I see a lot of people muskie fishing. I hear about a lot of people getting into muskie fishing, and I start asking them questions just because I'm a curious person, I guess. But there's a lot of people that start muskie fishing, and they don't have a hook cutter in the boat. They don't have a big rubber net. Like, the net's not even big enough for muskies that they're using. They don't have a lot of these proper tools to take care of the fish once they get it. And I've been thinking a lot lately about how they're trying to take away opportunity instead of educate when it comes to muskies. So now, like, the whole proposal on Leech Lake is that they want to stop people from fishing these fish that everybody's catching. And I mean, it is the point of the resource, right? Like, we put muskies in the lake so we can have the opportunity to go catch them. Like, we can't even keep them. It's a 54-inch size limit on them. But now we're taking away more opportunity to even target them in a very effective way. And I think that's where education kind of comes in saying, like, hey, be cognizant of how long that fish is out of the water. Maybe what kind of hooks we're using even too. Like, are we using a lure that has 3 treble hooks, which is 9 hooks in a fish's mouth that can do some serious damage, versus a lure that has 1 single hook or 2 single hooks? And there's a lot more that can be done, in my opinion, on just educating people first about muskie fishing instead of taking away the opportunity. Because I do think that everybody should get the opportunity to go out and experience really good muskie fishing that's been going on with the advent of live scope. Like, it's a cool way to fish. And yes, it's more effective than going out there and casting until your shoulders fall off. But some people say it's not really fishing because you're going out and you're searching for the fish first, and then you make a couple casts, and then you move on to another fish, and you're not really casting a lot. You're just searching. But I do think that education would help a lot.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's one thing you gotta take into consideration, right? Instead of just saying, nope, you can't do this anymore, or switch something where, you know what, it's kind of like this little one that just came in here. You educate them and you teach them, and then you hope that they can do the best they can to do it right the next time. But that's a great point that you bring up.
I do think too, like, that course, like an online course that the DNR mandates for you to actually be able to go muskie fishing would not be a huge inconvenience. And at the end, what would be cool is if there was a muskie stamp that you had to purchase, kind of like a trout stamp. So we spend like $10, whatever it is, to get that muskie stamp, and then we are able to go muskie fishing after we completed that course. And it doesn't have to be a long course. It could be 10 minutes. But just a reminder to people, like, hey, maybe let's get that fish in the water a little quicker. Maybe let's have the hook cutters ready to go, and if that hook is deep, let's cut that hook and just be done with it, get that fish back, and let's think about the fish a little bit more and try to preserve the resource in that way instead of preserving the resource by taking away opportunity.
Well, even just look at right now, the amount of information I just gathered from you, just something as simple as taking the hook out, going through the gill rather than trying to get through the mouth. But just that little education piece could go a long ways.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point you bring up, and maybe that's something that the state would consider moving forward, because obviously it doesn't matter if it's fish, turkey, deer, birds, you name it. They're a resource that we all enjoy, getting to go after, whether it's fishing, hunting. And we want to do what's best for the fish. And if you're not knowledgeable, or game or whatever, and if you're not knowledgeable in that area, you're going to mess up. But if you can get some education in there, hopefully that would help, along the way.
Well, and it just sucks too, because like everywhere across even the West right now with tags and stuff, tags are becoming more and more limited. Opportunity is disappearing.
Yep.
Opportunity is just disappearing for everything when it comes to outdoor recreation like that. And I just hate to see more of it. I would rather try to find ways to keep it around. And with $10 generated from like a muskie stamp, that could maybe get put back into muskie stocking. That could maybe make up for a few extra fish that end up dying because of catching a few more. I think catching fish is a good thing. Like catching more, I don't understand how catching more fish is not a good thing. Like, yeah, there's going to be more mortality, but maybe we can just supplement it with that little bit of money and a little bit extra stocking, and we can just have better time fishing, I guess. I don't know.
It just comes down to who gets the final say on where that money goes.
Right, that's the problem.
Let's kind of wrap things up here. I know we're getting towards the end, but if people are looking to book a trip with you, what can they expect going out with you?
Well, you can expect to just have a good time fishing, I guess. I always try everything I possibly can to put people on the type of fish that they're looking for, whether it's bringing home fish to eat or catching their very first muskie ever. Like, I thoroughly enjoy getting people their very first muskie because that's always just a cool thing a lot of people haven't got to experience.
Yep.
And it's one of the biggest fish we have in Minnesota, and it's just cool because it's a big predator, and they like to eat big lures. It's just a lot of fun.
If people want to find out more information on yourself and how they can book trips, why don't you put that information out there where they can find more info on you?
Yeah, you can message me on any social platform or my website. They're all the same. It's The Fish Guide, and guide is spelled Guyd. And yeah, just reach out to me and talk. Even if you just got some questions, I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have, and just try to get people on some better fishing. And if they want to book a trip and come out to try to get their first muskie, I'm more than happy to take you out, and we'll make it happen.
Sweet. This podcast was very educational for myself. I enjoy sitting down talking fishing because I'm very uneducated in it, and every little piece of information I can get, I'm going to put in the memory bank. But thanks for coming on with me and doing this podcast. Thanks for everybody listening. I hope everybody's getting excited as I am for the fishing opener. And it's not necessarily opener. It's we finally get to fish whenever we want again, So definitely looking forward to that. But once again, Nick, thanks for coming on. Thanks for everybody for listening. And until next time, have a great day. Hey, like I said, you guys, take advantage of that 10% discount that Nick will be running here until May 11th, 2025. Nick does a great job taking people out there, and he's a great person on top of everything. He knows how to catch fish, but more importantly, he's a good person to be around and enjoy a lot of time with in the boat. Once again, thanks to all our sponsors out there, Arctic Shield, Domain Outdoor, J&R Outdoors, Skullcraft, The Fish Guide, TactCam, and also Fourth Arrow Camera Arms. I hope you guys are getting excited for the fishing opener. I know I am. I'm looking forward to getting out there and starting a new adventure with my summers, and it's not just going to be baseball anymore. Looking forward to getting on the lake just a little bit more, not only with myself, but also with my kids and my family. So I hope you guys are having a great day, and till then, we'll catch you next time. And thanks again for listening.